Welcome to the final episode of the Summer Series Shutdown.
He'll struggle to review the whole season when Verstappen has won the title with 5 races to go, which it seems very likely at this rate. Let's go with Lance Stroll. I just feel like me
Okay.
and him wouldn't get on because we come from very different lifestyles. I just don't think I'll have anything in common with him whatsoever. The season's been very different to last year. Last year was full of absolutely every bit of drama that Drive to Survive could have wished for. Obviously, some things went well over the line. Abu Dhabi last year, for example, being one of them. Saudi, again, very questionable what went on. There's so many things to battle. You've got other things like social media and trying to not take that too seriously because that can be such an echo chamber of horrible people.
Welcome to the final episode of the Summer Series Shutdown. You're joined by your usual co-host, the extraordinary and sensational smooth operator, AMG Dent. And unfortunately, I haven't got my colleague, F1 Black, just yet, but he should be joining us soon. But either way, you can tell by the sheer excitement in my voice that we've got a very tremendous guest to wrap up the sensational run of episodes we've been recording during and slightly after the F1 summer break as well. And wow, it's a really amazing honor to have this guest because they've single-handedly found a way to connect new generations of fans with Formula One as a sport. The platform that they've created reaches about 12 million motorsport enthusiasts a month. So joining us today, I'm very, very honored to say we have the very legendary #1 F1 presentator in the world. Got to get that in there too, Matt Gallagher. Matt, how's it going?
Wow, I mean, what an introduction. I wouldn't have probably said any of that about myself, but I appreciate you saying it. Yeah, my ego's been inflated, so thank you. And thanks for having me on.
Oh, no worries at all, man. No worries at all. Like, as soon as Georgina told me that, you're going to star on our show at some point, I was extremely excited because, not having a fanboy moment here, but I remember the Matty G series on YouTube and, just being in like secondary school and watching your videos on YouTube in your earlier stage of your career. So, to actually have you here, it's like, wow, I think I've come full circle, in terms of like, my experience with F1 and just content creator kind of world as well. So firstly of all, Matt, I gotta ask, how was your summer break? Did you get up to much whilst F1 was away? And what were your initial thoughts of the first race back in Spa?
Well, firstly, yeah, my summer break. As much as some people think I just go away or people just disappear from the Formula One world. Obviously, with WTF1, we continued to churn out content, and it was a bit sparse for news after the whole Oscar Piastri drama and things like that. But overall, just getting ready for the second half of the season. It's a shame that the championship is so far out of reach for anybody now. I think Verstappen's very much got that wrapped up, but. Spa, yeah. I mean, obviously, as a Ferrari fan, as a Leclerc fan, it was even more pain. Wasn't really expecting to, after having 3 weeks to kind of recover and get over Hungary, for them to then turn up and be nowhere near Red Bull and, of course, have a little blunder at the end as well. It just felt like F1's back, and I love it. It's still quite painful though.
I could imagine, and to kind of touch on that as well, Matt. For those who don't know but should know, like you're a huge Charles Leclerc stan, which I can appreciate as well because he's an amazing driver, super talented, and I think he's the kind of typical Ferrari superstar that you think of when you think of the brand and Ferrari's heritage in Formula One. But man, it had to be such an annoying thing for you, to kind of have the engine penalties at the beginning of the week, which we found out about. Then there was that peculiar mistake in qualifying where they sent him out on fresh tires, although ideally he would have just used some scrubs as he's trying to give his teammate Carlos Sainz a nice tow through Eau Rouge, or Radion actually, as I know Tommy would say. And, on top of that as well, very unlucky during the race as well, during that safety car, Max pulls off his terror visor like it's banana peel in a Mario Kart, goes into Charles Leclerc's side put, and from there it just seemed like it was going to be a weekend of damage limitations. And on that kind of topic as well, Matt, just what have your kind of comments been on this Ferrari this season? And it must be so frustrating, to see them with such a beautiful car that actually has performance too, but then through sometimes either strategy or sometimes reliability, or even through driver error, sometimes it doesn't always come together on the day.
It's been a struggle to watch for sure,
Mm.
because there's been an opportunity here, I'd say, to at least look at Spa and go, well, Red Bull were quicker on the day, fair enough, to and fro in. But with all of the points that they've lost this year, they have to be able to look back and go, what a missed opportunity that was. Now, who knows what's going to happen in the next few races, and maybe Red Bull will run away with it, and Ferrari won't have won the championship anyway. But the fact that they are looking in their mirrors at Mercedes rather than in front of them with Red Bull is just so painful to watch, because we did a video on WTF1 not that long ago during the summer break, in fact, which was kind of totting up, hypothetically, how many points has Ferrari lost. And this wasn't even to do with the swing of the points. This was just pure points that Leclerc has lost. If you then take into into the account that Verstappen, that would have finished P2, finished P1, that's another 7-point swing, or maybe 8 if it's fastest lap as well. And just from the pure points alone of like 25 points lost for a victory, Leclerc has lost 100. Well, that was before Spa. Lost 125. Obviously, a lot of that through reliability, some of it through strategy blunders. It's going to be a real struggle to review the whole season when Verstappen has won the title with 5 races to go, which it seems very likely at this rate.
I agree, Matt. And, it's been an eye-opening one for sure in a sense, because we thought as well with the new kind of like technical directives that also the FIA came forward with, like going back to Spa, we thought that things might be a bit more open, but it actually seemed to be that Mercedes and Ferrari were quite close to each other on this kind of pace, and Red Bull, for example, it seemed to just find that extra actual advantage. And I could almost envision like Christian Horner and Helmut Marko with some very smug looks on their faces as they watched the opposition and Max drift around the final corner. But we won't reminisce too much on the sad parts, Matt, because we do like happy Matt Gallagher. And to be fair, like what we want to do with this episode, as well as like touching in on some key flashpoints of the season, we want to use this opportunity to find out more about you, ex Matty G, Matt Gallagher, literally the voice of WTF1. So we've got a blend of interactive questions where you have to give selective answers for, and this more open questions as well. So let's start with the first one whilst we're at it. The kind of key question we always start off with, Matt, is we love to ask the guests what were their first experiences getting into watching F1, and what were your aspirations growing up, because like you are such an integral part of just like, I would say, sports social media platforms. I know you might underplay it and be quite bashful like Lando Norris, but I don't think it could be denied. Like you guys at WTF1, you, Katie, Tommy, the whole crew, you guys have done something really remarkable and given almost like the new generation, the next upcoming kind of like viewers, something to be part of. And I think I've seen like a really interesting shift from people picking up the magazine and autosport and stuff like this, kind of to tuning in and watching podcasts or all the great and awesome ideas you guys come up with on the podcast and platform too. So yeah, just what were your initial first F1 experiences, and what are your aspirations growing up as well? Did you always want to get into like being a commentator, or was this something that you fell into?
Well, firstly, thank you. It's weird to hear that sort of stuff said out loud, and we just think we're me, Tommy, Katie, just these people making some silly content online, and you sometimes don't with how busy it can get. It's quite easy to just keep chugging along and not really take a step back and see what you're doing. So thank you for that. But also, well, where do I begin? Well, I never in a million years thought that I would be anywhere near the world of Formula One. Not at all. I loved Formula One ever since I was about 3 years old. My dad plonked me in front of the television. He loved Formula One, and he wanted me to be into it, clearly. And his his just putting me in front of those races clearly captured my attention as a young kid. And I fell in love with watching the sport, and also Michael Schumacher was my idol, perhaps because I was a glory hunter at that age. But either or, loved seeing him winning, and he was very much my sporting idol growing up. My aspirations, gosh, I mean, I thought I was going to be a teacher, to be honest with you. Like something completely different. When I was growing up at school, I was like, oh yeah, I'm quite. I don't know. I wasn't even that great at school. It was just like one of those things you kind of fall in and go, yeah, you could become a teacher. So that was sort of what I started to think would be good for me. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of just evolved. I didn't go to university because at that point I'd sort of realized that maybe being a teacher wasn't the way to go, and sort of just was doing this, as you've mentioned, Matty G, my old channel, and just being a stupid kid on there shouting at games. But it was always ever going to be a hobby. On the other side of that, I was full-time working in schools, but not as a teacher, but for a company that was called Connections, which was essentially helping young people in schools and also people find employment. So I essentially was a kind of counselor, I suppose, in schools, and used to take them to trips and things like that to try and basically help them on their way through school and hopefully get some sort of more ambitious career for them and whatnot. So it was a very rewarding job. But I always obviously had my passions for Formula One. And yeah, like one day, just Tommy sent me a message on Twitter, which was completely and utterly baffling that he had even sent me a message, because at that point, I'm just some stupid kid shouting at games on the internet. And WTF1, even back then, was wow, okay, WTF1 are talking to me. That's pretty damn cool. So any normal person may have given it a few minutes or a few hours to play it cool to replying to Tom's DM, but I replied within about 30 seconds. Because he wanted to share with me that there was this project that was going on with WTF1. They wanted to launch a YouTube channel, etc., etc. And so the rest is history. So I kind of got into how I got into WTF1. But my main ambition, commentary was always something I really enjoyed, when I was making videos, but never in a million years did I think I'd do F1 esports, for example, or F1 TV. Those things are just pipe dreams that I never thought was possible, because I was just an average Joe that loves F1, really.
That's so interesting, Matt. And I think, again, this it's just a testament to this how amazing you are as a person, your charisma, your energy, and like you mentioned as well. I mean, we'll touch on it probably a bit later on in the show as well. But just those kind of contents that you'd make on the XMIG program, for example, when you're doing the last to first challenges, or you're doing like career modes. And I remember back then, even now, not to kind of give them too much of a dig, but the Codemasters games maybe had a couple of bugs or glitches, and just your commentary over some of those races, just stuff of the gods. Honestly, it's just really funny and entertaining and engaging stuff as well. So it's intriguing to know that it wasn't always something that you had lined up on the cards, but again, just through your hard work, you being genuine, even somebody like Tommy Bellingham, that could see your talent and see a kind of vision of how you'd fit in to the WTF1 platform as well. And like you said, the rest is history. And it's again, those are not numbers to shy away from. 12 million enthusiasts a month is crazy. That is actually a complete new landmark.
It's when you look at the numbers, and of course we have targets and things that we want to be achieving, but the thing I love the most is when I actually go to events and meet the people that watch what we do or consume what we do in whatever platform, because that's when it's a sort of a reality check for me, where you go, oh wow, I am actually making a difference. Because that's kind of what I wanted to do when I worked in schools, is that I enjoyed seeing that development from a kid in school that maybe after a few chats with me would then have a bit more ambition or a bit more about them that they wanted to succeed. And it's kind of similar in a weird way to what I'm doing now, where people have messaged me or spoken to me at races and gone, Matt, your stupid internet's best reactions got me through some really tough times and stuff like that. And you don't realize that when you're doing it. You're just trying to obviously entertain and keep it as as fun as possible, but you don't actually realize when you actually strip back the layers until you speak to these people at events. And so that's what I really, really love doing. And I'd love to do more of, to be honest. but yeah, it's mad to see the growth of the sport. It's mad to see the growth of WTF1. We love to be this sort of quite inclusive community where we don't take things too seriously. Like, I'm a Leclerc fanboy. Verstappen's Tommy's a Verstappen fanboy. Like, we aren't traditional media, and that's what a lot of people sometimes fail to process in their head. They're like, "Oh, you're biased." It's like, yes, I'm quite clearly biased towards Leclerc. I try and be objective when I talk about races and stuff, but everyone has natural bias. If you're saying you don't, you're not human. You're a robot. So it's kind of making people understand that at times, but a lot of people get it. That's why, thankfully, we have so many people following us and enjoying the journey that we're on. And I can't ever be more thankful, because without them, I would be doing something very, very normal and not fulfilling my dreams, and also bringing people along with me. You know, that's the beautiful part of YouTube in particular, is being able to document me just losing my mind over meeting a driver or having an amazing opportunity, and to think that that's even possible for someone like me is crazy.
Oh, it's super inspirational, man. And like you mentioned as well, just the journey you kind of went on as well, and just the kind of like natural kind of chemistry you had with Tommy, and obviously now Katie's more kind of recurring on a lot of the episode stuff. Stuff like that too. It's amazing, and like you said too, having that community and being able to build something which everybody can kind of relate to, or everybody can kind of take a piece from it too, I think is incredible. So again, we'll probably discuss that in a bit more detail a bit later on. But what I'll do now, I'll segue into one of our first interactive questions. So Matt, for some of these questions, you have to pick a driver, and bear in mind, if you pick this driver, you then can't use them again in any of the other interactive questions.
Oh
So
God.
I know, right?
Every time. Okay, cool.
Exactly. That was the aim. So yeah, so you have to kind of pick a bit strategically, but I'll go with the first one. So I'm gonna set the scene. Imagine you have to basically go into town because you're gonna have dinner with one of your favorite drivers. But on the way of meeting one of your favorite drivers, you've obviously got to get a taxi, drive there. So there's going to be a taxi driver involved. And whilst you're in the restaurant having dinner, there's one particular driver on the grid. You're just trying to basically avoid making contact with them at all costs. So essentially, Matt, this kind of a spin-off of Snug Marry Avoid, because we're a very PG channel here, but instead we have Taxi Dinner Avoid. So which F1 driver would you like to have a taxi ride with? Which F1 driver would you want to have dinner with? And which F1 driver would you politely try and avoid?
Oh, who would be my taxi driver? Oh, that's an interesting one. I think I would go. Let's go with Lander. Well, that's a difficult one. Well, actually, no, because when I go in a taxi, a lot of the time, because a lot of people think that just because I do presenting and everything like that I'm like this most confident guy, blah 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 blah, always loud. I'm actually quite a shy, reserved individual. So when I'm in a taxi, I don't mind a bit of silence. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
It's unfortunate that Kimi Raikkonen's not on the grid, because that would definitely be my go-to. Oh gosh, this is difficult. Let's go with George Russell. I feel like he'd be quite to the point. He'll be matter of fact. He'll get me there on time. There's no way George Russell's being late. There's not a chance. So
True.
I think George would be a very efficient taxi driver for me. Dinner, 100% would be Daniel Ricciardo. That man is a complete and utter legend. He's more fun off camera than he is on camera, and you can just think of how fun he is on camera. That man has a heart of gold, and I will always support him and want the best for him. And then avoid. Who would I avoid?
Dun, dun. It's tricky because, like, I think the problem we have here is like most of the drivers on the grid, they're not that controversial. Like, we don't have a Mazepin
last year.
Exactly.
It's harsh. It's hard even because I don't think I would. Let's go with Lance Stroll. I just feel like me and him wouldn't get on. Because we come from very different lifestyles. I just don't think I'll have anything in common with him whatsoever. So let's go with Stroll.
I think that's a fair choice. And I think, like you mentioned as well, of all the drivers you can think of on the grid, I think with Lance, I always get the impression he's one of those characters which would be hard to kind of get to open up to. But I think if you can like establish some sort of common ground, you might actually be okay. But yeah, when
Yeah,
you've got like the
absolutely.
plethora of
You
like
see him come out a bit,
personalities.
but I think he hates media people, so he won't like me. So there you
Who knows, man? Maybe you need to get him to tune into more episodes of
go.
WTF1 and we could change his mind
Maybe
on
not when
that.
he's had a
Yeah.
bad race, and I wouldn't suggest that.
True, true. But actually, whilst you're on the topic of it as well, man, you touched on Daniel Ricciardo there and quite kind of like on the topic of which as well. It's gutting, to see that he's not going to be with McLaren next season. I think when that news came around initially, like to be on and like the beginning of the journey, when we were talking about like him moving from Renault at the time to McLaren, we thought that'd be the perfect fit because him and Zach Brown have that kind of buddy personality with each other. Him and Lando as well, obviously have quite a lot of like things in common to a degree, and I will never forget that infamous pubes interview or kind of like yeah, debrief they had as well. But yeah, it hasn't really worked out, and now we're in a situation where we're hoping that he gets a seat next season. What's your thoughts, and generally as well, where would you like to see him go next season?
My thoughts are he hasn't been good enough. As much as that hurts me to say out loud, like McLaren hasn't worked for whatever reason. Every fan can try and strip it back and analyze it to a certain degree. The main thing is that he has not been good enough for that McLaren second seat. What the reasons are, we don't know. There has to be a part of McLaren where they have to think, why didn't it work? And Danny Rick also needs to think that way. He's still a good enough driver. People that are saying that he's finished don't have a clue what they're talking about, because he is, firstly, obviously an 8-time F1 race winner. And also he has done very, very well in other, in Red Bull, for example, obviously winning races and being a reasonably decent teammate compared to Max Verstappen, who we're clearly seeing is one of the best we've ever seen. At Renault, he was decent as well. Obviously, he wasn't particularly comfortable at times, but he still showed decent pace and scored some decent results. He then obviously has gone to McLaren. It hasn't worked out. Lando is a brilliant driver. He's there. It's his team. It was always going to be very difficult to overthrow him. I think the expectations were that he was going to, including myself. I thought he was going to be a much better match for Lando than he has been. But you can't defend him in the sense of, I'd love to have seen. I just want to see him in Formula One, and this is where maybe a level of bias is coming, where I genuinely just think he's great for Formula One. And people go, well, it's the best 20 drivers on the grid. Well, you can't just have someone that smiles all the time. I'm like, well, he's not the 20th worst driver on the grid. He's not. There are worse drivers that are still driving in this season. So to say that he doesn't deserve a Formula One seat, full stop, is a bit mad, in my opinion. Where do I think he should go? Well, from his video he did, basically announcing he wasn't going to drive for McLaren, his whole demeanour looked like he hadn't got anything sorted, and maybe he was a little bit on the apprehensive side, because there's talk about Gasly, Schumacher maybe taking the Alpine seat. I don't think they should go for Schumacher. If they can get Gasly, I think that'd be a great shout. But then again, Ocon and Gasly apparently don't get on, so there's lots of different storylines going on. But I think Danny Rick deserves to be in Formula One. I think the only seat for him that would make sense is Alpine. Other teams, I'm not sure they would be able to afford what his sort of level is in terms of salary. But does he take a pay cut? There's lots of different questions going on. But I think he would fit very well into Alpine after being there before. He'll know a lot of people that work there. He'll be up against Ocon, who he should be able to match and do pretty well against. And maybe he can rebuild from there, but he's not getting any younger.
That's also true. We speak a lot about like age and, like it's interesting in Formula One in one sense that the careers of the drivers are getting much longer, which is great, due to safety and obviously advancements in health and well-being. But at the same time as well, I think just like what we've seen with Alonso, just when you get older, there's always that pressure on you to perform. And in his admissions, he's even said the reason for him basically leaving Alpine was one, due to them not giving him a multi-year contract due to his age, but then also two, the pressure of always being compared to like Ocon, which I feel I get. And as a team, you always want to make sure that your two drivers are as closely matched as possible. But then on the flip side for him, maybe there's that sense of ego. Maybe there's a sense of, well, I'm a two-time world champion, and Ocon, he's won a race, which again is quite interesting and kind of thing I guess people forget with Ocon. But on top of that as well, like Alonso is a lot more declarated in the sort of career that he's had, not only just in Formula One, but also in other series too. So there's so many different facets to it as well. And, like I think as well, Matt, like I think Alpine would be a really great shout for Daniel Ricciardo. I think there's a lot of familiarity there for him as well. But then on the flip side too, like, I don't know, I could see him at Haas as well with Gunther Steiner and K-Mac. I know that you guys on WTF1 have some awesome K-Mac merch as well.
Mhm.
So I'll plug that too. But yeah, just I think he's the sort of guy where because of his personality, I know some people don't like that he's not always serious. So, that he can be a bit like of a comedian at times. But personally, for me, like you said, I think he adds value to the sport. And I think equally, not that I think he would, but if he did, if he went to a series like IndyCar, for example, you probably see an increase in the ratings and viewerships of IndyCar, for example, because they really cherish the drivers. And, they're willing to almost give drivers in that series like a second chance, even if things haven't worked out in F1. So it's interesting, and I think it's really good that we kind of address that one too. But to kind of move on to the next question as well, Matt, like we kind of touched on it earlier too. Like we were doing like essentially like a snapshot of how the championship's going right now in relation to that. But how would you rate this championship in comparison to last year's fiery fight between Max and Lewis? What have you made of Max's driving, for example, and his driving standards? Because I think a lot of people last year were quite infuriated, triggered, annoyed, just with some of Max's like tactics and kind of backhanded stuff he would do. But on the flip side, for the balance of the argument, you could say that at the time, Honda and Red Bull didn't know that they were going to absolutely walk the 2022 championship. So you could maybe argue that for those purposes alone, they were always going to try and take as much risks as they could and like try and take away any advantage that Mercedes had as well from either Lewis or the team generally. But with Leclerc, we've almost seen like a version of Max, one that's a bit more kind of like compliant, one that picks and chooses his battles quite wisely, and even if he's not the fastest guy or doesn't have the fastest car on the weekend, he's always still there to try and kind of mix it up with the guys and maximize points. So how have you seen it so far?
I mean, this season's been very different to last year. Last year was full of absolutely every bit of drama that Drive to Survive could have wished for. I personally loved it. I enjoyed it. I love controversy in sport is what generates discussion, and I think obviously some things went well over the line. Abu Dhabi last year, for example, being one of them. Saudi again, very questionable. What went down there in terms of decisions and wanting to make it a level point finale going into the final race. This year, yeah, it's been a bit. We've had some good races. I think we expected a bit more maybe between Verstappen and Leclerc. They've been very, very polite to each other, but they also have raced each other for many, many years. So if anything, they have felt out each other's driving styles many years before even coming into Formula One. Whereas Verstappen versus Hamilton, their driving styles clearly don't go very well because Hamilton won't give an inch. Hamilton does give an inch, but we saw in a lot of incidents that he was willing to risk it kind of thing. Whereas I felt like Leclerc almost this year, he was obviously very tactically minded in Saudi and Bahrain. They were both, it was almost like a game of chess really, and a very calm and polite game of chess. So yeah, it's been completely different. I don't think there's much that Leclerc would maybe change in his driving style. It's obviously been more that Ferrari have let him down. He's obviously made a few mistakes as well. So yeah, it's a massive shame that Verstappen's so far clear, because this championship could have easily gone down to the wire again had Ferrari nailed it. But yeah, we need a bit more controversy. They're all a bit too polite with each other, and a bit of wheel banging here and there never hurt anybody.
Absolutely, and I think we've seen that with Fernando Alonso and Lewis at the weekend as well. And whilst as well, Matt, I've got my colleague in here.
Not that much wheel banging. That's quite a lot. We don't want Hamilton going up in the air.
Yeah, with like a 41G impact as well, must I add.
Yeah, that was big.
But indeed. But whilst we're here as well, we got my co-host as well, the brilliant F1 Black. Black, I know that you just like tapped in as well, and you've probably overheard us kind of assessing just the current state of the championship. I want to kind of segue you into it as well quite smoothly and ask your thoughts on it before you ask Matt some questions too.
Yeah, hi Matt. Fantastic to meet you, and looking forward to having a good discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Nice to meet you too, mate.
Brilliant. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and in terms of, hopefully my audio levels are okay, but in terms of this season, it is a shame that essentially the title's wrapped up and going into the summer break. I think, yeah, Ferrari have thrown things away through a combination of perhaps not being as ruthless as Red Bull on who the number one is. I probably suspect they don't have a number one even now, and also the reliability issues, and of course the dreaded strategy. So yeah, I think it's over, but that doesn't mean we can't have some interesting races in the second half of the season. And for me, fingers crossed that Lewis maintains his record, although after Spa, we'll see. I'm not sure quite when we'll put this episode out. So Matt, I don't know how far Denz has got into this, but I was certainly fascinated reading up on you, reading an article I think you wrote for WTF1 maybe a year ago about how you started in YouTube and how you built your career from there, and to go from where you started to where you are now, and the things you've commentated on and the columns you've done, etc. What do you remember of those early days starting on YouTube? Does it still feel quite soon or a long time ago?
What, starting on YouTube full stop, or starting on YouTube with WTF1? Because they're two very different timelines.
Yeah, exactly. Well, starting on YouTube full stop.
That is a throwback. Yeah, that's sort of 2010 era, which is frighteningly 12 years ago. God, I'm sounding like my parents now with the throwbacks to over 10 years ago to things is quite scary. But yeah, I mean, it was a hard old slog, really. I mean, but it was fun. Like, there was nothing more to it than me just having a bit of fun and not having a filter and just being an idiotic kid with a game capture and a microphone. I think, yeah, the very early days, I used to, try and capture my gameplay in any which way I could. I had game captures called Blitzbox HD, which was the biggest pile of crap I've ever used in my entire life. But it was something that, that was the only thing that was around sort of those days. I couldn't afford a Hopag HD PVR, whatever it was called, for many, many years after that. But yeah, no, it was just fun. It was just on the side. Never thought anything would come of it. Never dreamed of anything coming of it. Until, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Tommy came into my messages in sort of end of 2016 and wanted to open the discussion up about potentially an exciting project coming with WTF1 to do with YouTube and things like that. And then, yeah, the process sort of start of 2017. I had a lot of interviews, had a test podcast. I had a test filming shoot, which was at the Birmingham NEC for the Autosport International show. And the funny thing is, like, I was so used to talking, but in a microphone in front of gameplay at home. But this was to be a presenter for a YouTube channel, which is a very different kettle of fish, and something that I was absolutely bricking it that day, because everything they told me, all the interviews that I'd done, I genuinely thought, oh my God, this is my dream right in front of me. It's on this plate. Will I drop the plate? I don't know. But obviously I was there, had the test shoot, didn't have a clue where to put my hands. No idea. I was so rigid. It was outrageous. But yeah, thankfully, even with all the things that I was yet to learn, they could see there was the passion there was the enthusiasm, and they were willing to take me on and not only just do the presenting, but everything behind the scenes. So everything you see on the YouTube channel, whether it's the scripting or the content ideas, a lot of it comes through me, obviously through help from Tommy and Katie as well sometimes. But from the beginning, that was my job to run the whole thing. So yeah, it was a big old project, and so much has been learned over the last 5.5, 6 years.
Yeah, it's incredible. You mentioned that there's kind of a gulf between when you started on YouTube and when you started at WTF1. It's probably equidistant between your start completely and now when you went on to WTF1. So 6 years at least as ex Matty G. What do you think ex Matty G would think about Matt Gallagher, presenter of F1 esports?
It'd be like, dream on, mate. There's no way. That's not happening. Wake up, Matt. Jesus, go get a real job. That's probably what ex Matty G would say. But yeah, it's weird to even think about those times and how it was just very much a bit of fun. Shouting at games with some of my friends, Tim at Marduk, Arav. I'm so proud of those guys as well for how far they've come in the industry. And it's mad to see the progression of us all. It's taken us in so many crazy different journeys.
I can imagine that. It feels like there's almost the hand of fate. At the beginning, you clearly don't know where it's going to end up, but you've all, you and some of your peers from back then have kind of gone off in different directions and been really successful. Yeah, I was going to make the joke about not knowing what to do with your hands, but you made it already, switching from kind of, as you say, ranting over kind of gaming content to presenting. How would you say your sort of presentation style has evolved over the years? Has it been organic, or have you sought to work on a few things?
Oh, it's completely organic, but I think it's all just come from confidence, and that's taken a lot of time to build that camera confidence, to build the fact people are watching you behind a camera or watching at home, or it's live, or you've got lights on you. Things like that you can't really teach yourself unless you're born with innate confidence, which I absolutely was not. I was bullied the life out of at school, so I had no confidence whatsoever coming out. And it was just incrementally using the only bit of fuel I had to try and push myself to do things was the fact that I loved Formula One so much, and even the smallest of possibilities this could be my job is something that pushed me to go, yeah, let's go for it. Oh my God, this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it turned out to be that for sure. But yeah, it's just taken years and years of building very small blocks of self-belief to eventually get to a point where I go, yeah, I am good at my job, and that's not a bad thing to think that, because it's still, on the flip side, crazy, and this is like the insecurities of me coming out and going, yeah, but why are you in this position, Matt? You're kind of lucky, aren't you? And you have all these things, imposter syndromes going through your head, and there's so many things to battle. You've got other things like social media and trying to not take that too seriously, because that can be such an echo chamber of horrible people piling onto you. So there's so many different bits of learnings that you get, building up my confidence and learning how to present and all this sort of stuff, but also learning how to deal with people that are going to hate you no matter what. And yeah, it's been a long old journey with a lot of ups, as you see on the YouTube channel, but I think it's fair to say, and probably right to say, that there's been some downs too.
Well, look, on this show, I tend to try and steal people's intellectual property. And the last comment you made was really fascinating. In fact, I was going to ask about imposter syndrome. But on the subject of people who are going to hate you no matter what, I think we all experience, to some extent, not to your degree because of your sort of scale, but to some extent, those haters and those trolls online. What's your sort of tip for dealing with it? Do you tune it out, or what's your approach?
It's got easier as time's gone on. Like the first few times when people have piled onto me, I thought it was the end of the world, basically. To now, where maybe with a bit of age as well, I'm just trying to tune my brain into thinking it does not matter what these people think. It really doesn't, unless there's constructive feedback which you can take from and learn from. If they're just going to insult you, there's really no point in even trying to absorb that or letting it get to you. And sometimes things will get to me, but I can brush it off so much quicker than what I used to. Now, I don't know what that is in terms of a tip. I think when the times get tough towards the beginning and it's almost like a new experience to receive an influx of hate, that will be the time where, one, you obviously get very you will get hurt. It will hurt to see these sorts of stuff flying, and you'll start to question yourself. But then you also need to kind of reflect and go, well, is there anything in here that actually makes sense? Is there anything that you've gone, okay, fair enough, I could have done this slightly differently? So I would just try and take any bits that are actually helpful, and if not, they can just get in the bin. Like it's as simple as that. And there's lots of motivational TikToks that you see occasionally, which I stumble upon, and that they'll say about the jealousy that a lot of people have, and it's easier for these people to try and take down people that they not look up to but are jealous of, and they're jealous of their success than trying to improve their own lives. And unfortunately, that's how some people are. But yeah, it's a difficult one to be able to manage for sure.
The entitlement of some people that sort of, I don't know, maybe they've got nothing better to do in their lives, but they feel it's incumbent on them to be in the mentions, just saying the most outlandish things out of nowhere, maybe just to get a reaction. And yeah, it's a terrible sort of element or aspect of life online. Here's a question, final sort of major question before I hand back to Dens. Do you think at the other end of the spectrum, so you talked about how you kind of determine, look, most of these people, or a lot of these people that are just piling on for hate to get a reaction, they haven't got much constructive to say, I can tune that out eventually. Do you think there's a risk at the other end of the spectrum, and maybe in the F1 paddock even, that you can tune out the fans' voices too much? And, you talked a little bit earlier about the end of the 2021 season, and we all know what happened in Abu Dhabi. My perception was that, the F1 paddock almost had a different view of what happened, or had a group recollection of what happened and so on, versus what I saw online and what I saw in certain fan groups. So do you think there is also a risk of kind of groupthink, or that you can block out too much? Where do you think you are on that spectrum?
I think it's just recognizing where there's an echo chamber and where there's a genuine consensus from people online. I think that is the big thing, is that comments on a tweet, for example, can make you feel like loads of people disagree with you or think you're terrible or whatever. But if you actually take a step back and look at the engagement on it, for example, likes are a very good way of seeing if somebody, on the most part, agree with you or think that your opinion is at least worthy. And you might get 50 comments that say, "Oh, you're an absolute piece of trash, Matt. You know nothing. You know no wheel knowledge, all this rubbish that you see on Twitter." But then you have 10,000 likes, and you go, "Well, actually, okay, that's probably not everybody hates what I'm saying. It's just these people." Because usually there's not going to be many people that go, "I like this tweet, Matt. Good job." But they'll just see it and move on with their day. The people that don't agree with it are the ones that will pipe up. So that's the echo chamber that I think you have to be very wary with. If you create your own podcast or whatever, you need to make sure that you don't get drowned out by the negativity, because in the grand scheme of things, if you've got followers, if you've got people that tune into your podcast, etc., they're there for a reason. But no, I don't think I'm tuned out, because I think the main thing is our tagline is we're fans making content for other Formula One fans. That's the key thing for us. And I feel like we are quite in tune with that, especially, for example, 2021 Abu Dhabi was not afraid to say that it was an absolute farce. What they did, I don't think Verstappen deserved any hate whatsoever. And I think people that say that he's an undeserving world champion, or that he had anything to do with what went on, is crazy. And if anything, the bias from fans who are so hardcore for one driver or another are the problem, not the potentially, like, for example, me commenting on it like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting debate for sure, but we have to make sure that we are keeping in line with the fans and kind of know what's what. And we do a lot of polls. We try and get a lot of people involved in terms of commenting and shouting people out or asking questions in our podcast, for example. We try and keep our ear to the ground with the F1 fans for sure, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that keep us going.
And I think looking at the end of last season, your point about, perhaps there were people on either side that were, running off of pure emotion. For me, I looked at it quite rationally. It looked just quite directly that the rules weren't followed, and then that decision was ratified, or precedent wasn't followed. I don't need to prove that, it was because of hatred towards Lewis Hamilton from the FIA. I don't know if that's the case. Frankly, I don't care. Equally, I don't need to try and say that Max was behind the scenes, making it happen. Of course he wasn't. He was racing is race, and you can think what you like about Max, but clearly he had the chance to overtake and he did it. I personally think his style of racing is perhaps too aggressive, but he won that race. The rules weren't followed, but he won that race and he won the championship.
That's the beauty of the sport. That's the beauty of the sport, isn't it? To have that opinion of, well, I think his driving style's too aggressive. Someone else will go, well, actually, that's how you win world championships. And neither of you are right, because there is no definitive answer. And that's the beauty of Formula One.
Well, that's the subjective bit, but and that's the fun, and that's us having a conversation. But I think ultimately, when it comes down to things like, the end of last season, you don't need to be too subjective on that. I mean, so talking about F1 rivalries, and I shudder to think what Prost Senna might have been if we had Twitter back then with the translate feature between our French and Brazilian friends. Look, you imagine a scenario. Quick question: imagine a scenario. You have a budget from Netflix, and you can make a documentary about any F1 rivalry. You talked about being a fan of the sport. Which drivers would you choose? And tell us a bit about why you think that rivalry is special to you.
Oh, which rivalry? Oh, Schumacher and Hakkinen, mainly because I'm a massive Schumi fanboy, and I'd love to deep dive into that a little bit more and find out what went on behind the scenes. But I'd also love to get a bit of a behind the scenes of the 2016 Hamilton versus Rosberg shenanigans that went on, because that was spicy to say the least. And I'd love to have had Toto Wolff in particular mic'd up and things like that. So those are probably the two that come to mind straight away.
Fascinating, Toto Wolff and probably Niki Lauda as well. Just hearing how they talked each other down after Spain, after Austria, and throughout the rest of the season. Absolutely. Okay, well, look, I'll hand back to Denz. It's been fascinating so far, and looking forward to hearing your answers to Denz's questions as well. Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
Hey, well, I'm back in, and I think some really awesome questions there from F1 Blag as well. He's the brilliant F1 Blag, as we call him here on the show. And Matt, just to go through some more questions as well with you, man. Like another kind of awesome thing that I don't think we've fully gone into detail with just yet as well is like the commentating you do for the esports series, like, and actually the official F1 esports competition as well, with the likes of Jana Opmeer, Brendan Lee, James Blakely. There's been so many awesome drivers, that have gone through the ranks and compete in like basically what is the F1 official esports competition, and you do a lot of the commentating for that as well. In relation to that, Matt, like, how did the opportunity come about, firstly of all? Because I know that the kind of esports thing, it was always there, but then because of the pandemic, it really seemed to have blown up with a lot of the real life F1 drivers also having a kind of like role in it at some varying degrees. And on top of that, like, how do you find it like narrating or commenting over a live esports race too, with the kind of depth of personalities you have there as well?
How did it come about? 2017, I think, was actually my first esports experience. So again, I've been doing it for quite some time. I can't remember exactly how it came through, but Gfinity, who are the ones that essentially manage and produce the F1 esports show, I'd been kind of putting out little fishing rod baits of, I'd love to do the esports. If there was ever F1 esports, I'd love to commentate on it. Just kind of trying to make, if anyone that had any kind of link to the show saw it, they might put me down on a very long list. It was always very kind of a big stretch. But yeah, I remember, I think Gfinity got us to come in and got me to come in and basically chat with them and find out, because they were looking to fill the roster of people on the show in terms of from the production side. And again, I think it helped because I was just so passionate about what I'd obviously done before, and I loved playing the F1 games. I used to play in leagues back in 2013, and I used to be pretty good on the controller. I wouldn't be anywhere near these guys now. But yeah, so I just kind of went in, chat with them. It was I think it was quite a short discussion really, where they just saw how passionate and enthusiastic I was for getting involved in the show, and that was it. And then they got me on. Originally I think I was on the touch screen to begin with. Then I moved to the desk as sort of the the not Tom Deacon, who's the host, but sort of like an analyst on there. And then I got moved to commentary, which was a couple of years ago now, and alongside Alex Jakes, which is a complete privilege. I love the guy, Alex, who I consider a good friend. He's obviously the Channel 4 Formula 1 commentator now, and he's brilliant. I do not rate anybody higher than Alex Jakes in the current commentator market. And I want him to do so unbelievably well. And I think he'll be the Sky Sports lead at some point in his career. But yeah, so I've done a bit of everything really. I'm the host of the F1 Esports qualifying show as well, which was my first ever live presenting gig to that level. Obviously, I've done live stuff on YouTube and stuff, but never proper full-blown production thing. So that was really special. Actually hosting a show and being able to bounce off the guests and things like that. And yeah, really cool. Like having an earpiece in my ear and getting fed information and then having to digest that information whilst also listening to someone else talking. That's something I have not mastered and probably will never master until the day I die, to be honest with you. It's the craziest thing to have to do. But yeah, I absolutely adore being on the F1 Esports show. Genuinely, it is such fun. And I want to do many, many more years of it.
That's so exciting to hear, Matt. And as well as that, it was so intriguing to kind of hear how, you involved.
It's not
But I was going to say as well, Matt, it's just so interesting as well, just to see how your presenting style has evolved over the years as well, obviously with the esports F1 stuff. And actually, for me, being kind of a casual sim racer too, I think I was very keen to kind of ascertain from you and our fans as well, keen to learn from you as well, is, you get access a lot, the esports drivers, the Yana Opmirs, the Brendan Lees, and the guys like this. How much effort and how much training really goes in, to them preparing for these races? Because there's so much at stake, and a lot of them as well, actually factory drivers, for either real F1 teams, such as Yana Opmeer for Mercedes, Brendan Lees had a stint with Ferrari. It's a lot of pressure, and I think when people look at esports, the much older generation or the not so savvy, they tend to kind of see it as this big kids kind of playing video games. But nowadays days, it's so competitive. Could you kind of touch into behind the scenes how competitive it is, and probably the amount of time an esports driver has to spend just to prepare for some of these races?
Yeah, I don't know their schedules off by heart or know a huge amount. Obviously, they do a lot of Twitch streaming these days, so you can see behind the scenes there really, and get a live version of what they're up to, whether they're having some fun on the career mode or if they're doing time trial. They're always practicing. I think especially on the run up to a new season, they'll be practicing at least 8 hours a day, like a full-time job really, because that's what they're paid to do and that's what the teams expect. But there's also the level of mental preparation and physical preparation, which is very similar, I'm sure, if you're with a big outfit like Mercedes or Ferrari, where they've got it in place for their drivers, and they will get their esports drivers to do very similar things, because they know that performance can be enhanced not just purely from practicing, but also with how you prepare yourself. So yeah, they take it very, very seriously. There's a lot of money on the line every year. Can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was $750,000 maybe is the price. I might have overdone that, but I'm not sure. Maybe $500,000. Anyway, it's a lot of money. That's what I'm getting at. And the teams want to win because, well, they can take a bit of that cash for themselves, I'm sure. But also, it's a great prestigious thing to be winning something that's officially a Formula One esports championship.
Absolutely. And it's just interesting as well, Matt, just to see the evolution, because again, a lot of the esports guys get the hero kind of credits and whatnot, but I guess for all of us, we all would have started off just as casual kind of players, and growing up as well and watching, like I mentioned earlier, you with the Matty G series, and I think one of the kind of series you were doing as well, the Rage series, has to be quintessentially one of the best series out there. It's amazing. And I hope one day you bring that back and revive it in some other guys. But also, Mac, we've talked about you meeting kind of esports drivers and obviously being part of the kind of the competitive side of that too. But you've had the opportunity also to meet real life F1 drivers as well, and competing in the actual real championship, and you know, like different kind of drivers that are in different parts of their careers too. Most recently, Sebastian Vettel, which I thought was a really heartwarming one too. But like, could you give us kind of insight into that as well? Who's like your favorite driver to like meet in person, and what was your kind of funniest moment with them as well, like on or off camera?
Well, you probably no surprise that it'll be Daniel Ricciardo as my answer for that after what I answered for the dinner thing. But yeah, we've been lucky enough to film with him a few times through various branded sponsorship opportunities. And yeah, he's amazing, genuinely. So fun to be around. We'll get 15 minutes with the driver, 20 minutes if we're lucky. The Vettel one was quite cool because we got the tearing around the inside Silverstone track, not Silverstone, but there's like the inner Stowe track, I think it's called, Stowe Circuit. So we had the opportunity to do that, and then also have a sit down 20-minute interview, I think, with him as well. So that was really cool. The Vettel thing was awesome. He was genuinely so interested about what we're doing and how we're doing it. It makes more sense now that he's announced his retirement, why he had so much interest in it. It's really cool. And again, I have to kind of pinch myself every time I do something like that, because I know a lot of people would love that opportunity, and I try not to take it for granted whatsoever. So yeah, Vettel, I had met him a few years ago, to be fair, when he was with Ferrari. We did a Shell thing in America where I hosted this show where it was very strange. We were like Top Golf, and Vettel was hitting balls, and then we went to a Shell forecourt, and it was him, Joey Logano, and Joseph Newgarden. So it hit all three big motorsport series. But yeah, a favorite moment. Oh, geez, there's so many that I just sort of, it all just kind of merges into one, to be honest. I think one of my favorite moments was being torn around Monaco by Nico Hulkenberg in a brand new RS Megane, that we were the only media in the world to get that opportunity. And not just that, it was just before, I think, FP1. So the crowd was there, and we're just tearing around in this camoed RS Megane. And I was just sat in the passenger seat like, why am I here? Why am I in this seat? What's going on? This makes no sense. But yeah, I think that's what people like to see, is my just genuine bewilderment as to how I'd fallen into this particular job. But if I think of any other specific moments, I will bring it up.
Oh, we'd love to hear it, Matt. And honestly, as well, like just even from like a fan like me, just like it's just awesome just watching you there in these moments as well. And like you said, being bewildered by the experience too, because I sit there, I'm just like, oh my god, if that was me, I'd probably be exactly the same as Matt. So I find myself often kind of like feeling like I'm living vicariously through you, which is awesome. And kind of on the topic of that as well, I'm gonna do another interactive question before I hand over the rest of the show to F1 Black. So I'm set the scene again, and the scenario is this, man. Ferrari, they're not so happy with the big boy Matteo Binotto, and sadly, they have made him part way. He's banished like Arriva Bene, and there's a new team principal. His name is Matt Gallagher, the awesome Matt Gallagher. You know, so you're the team principal, man, and essentially Ferrari tell you on the first day they want you to pick some other content creators to be the head of Ferrari social media, which is going to be a very interesting and tasking job in itself. You got to pick another content creator to be head of technical. And then you can pick any content creator, it's anybody you know, just to shout them out as well if you wish, to be a mentor / driver performance coach to both Charles and Carlos. Because you know, being a Ferrari driver is hard, and there are times where even if you do your job perfectly, there'll be a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, or plan E, which could go against you. So somebody there to kind of like pick them up. So 3 roles, Matt, just to go again: head of social media, head of technical, and like a driver, mentor, performance coach-ish type person too. Who would you pick in the world of content creators?
Head of social media, I'm calling Tommy Bellingham a content creator, because I mean he's verified on Twitter and I'm not, so that must mean something. So yeah, I think
hold on there, Matt. Why? Nah, we need to make a petition as soon as this episode's done to get your blue ticket.
I don't know. I think I might be the second most followed Twitter account that hasn't been verified behind God himself. You know, the God account that's like tweeted God or something. But I don't know. I don't know. That's a fact I made up. But it's I don't know. I've tried and I've just given up. So it doesn't matter. Like, a tick changes absolutely nothing. If anything, I think the cool people don't have ticks, really. So so if you're listening, Tommy, you're not cool. But I would go with Tommy for head of social media, because, well, I mean, he does social media anyway for us, so he's king of that. Head of, what was it, strategy? Did you say? Oh no,
strategy, technical,
probably Arav, because I know that he's done quite a bit of aerospace engineering, or whatever you want to call it. So he's very aerodynamically sound. So I would say probably put him in that position. And performance coach. Let's go with Tomo. I think Tomo's he'll give it to him straight, but I feel like he'll also be someone you can talk to. So yeah, we'll go with Tomo.
I think great choices, a good kind of like variety of personalities, you know. And again, like Arava as well, shout out to him as well, because like I remember watching kind of him as well with his career modes and alternative universes, and he was the one doing like driver transfers and F1 games before that was even a thing, you know. So shout out to him as well. Exactly. And then Tomo as well, you know, I think we're kind of in a similar space to him, kind of in terms of the content creation. And again, really sound lad, you know. I haven't like had any engagements with him personally, but a lot of our mutual friends have. And you know, he's one of those awesome content creators that has such a unique and like authentic way of putting things across. And I think even if you're talking about like a driver, coach, mentor type kind of personality, like you said, he's very honest, but at the same time as well, he's got the empathy and that kind of like ability as well. So I definitely agree with your choices there, Matt. Good choices. And what I'll do is I will hand over to Mr. Blagg.
Brilliant. So we're in the start-finish straight, Matt. You'll be relieved to hear. I've got questions, and then we'll end off with some more relaxed ones. So Matt, we've talked a bit about your journey so far, and it's been really fascinating to hear Matty G evolving into WTF1 and all the sort of shenanigans you've gotten up to with esports drivers and F1 drivers, and you describe yourself as a bewildered fan. What next for Matt Gallagher, and do you have any dreams that you're aspiring towards in the future?
What next? That is a big question. I think the key for me is doing what I love, and the stuff that I do on WTF1, the stuff, the moments I get to share with the viewers. Like, I love pretty much every aspect of my job when it comes to content creation and things like that. I'd love to go to more races. I'd love to be able to, you know, not I don't want to go anywhere near the full calendar, but I think it'd be nice to go to a few more events here and there. My girlfriend Soph, she's a massive Formula One fan as well, so I'd love to be able to incorporate her love for Formula One with mine, and maybe do a bit more content with her in the future and stuff like that. But I would say that nothing set in stone in terms of what I want to do next. Right now, I'm loving doing what I'm doing, and I don't really want to stray away from the stuff that we make. And as long as we are doing what people kind of want us to do, and the results make sense, and you know, we're not, if we go in the opposite direction in terms of views and stuff, we'll know we're doing something wrong, or maybe have to change things up. But right now, I'd say we're in a really good spot. And as long as and I think the key thing is, as long as I'm enjoying what I'm putting out and I believe in it, and I don't watch a video back and go, God, that is rubbish, Matt, what are you doing? Then I know that I'm in the right sort of area. I always want to be in Formula One. That I will cling on to Formula One for as long as I possibly can, because there's no other hobby, there's no other passion I have like it, really. So yeah, who knows? But I think that's an exciting thing. You just have to stay with the times, know what's trending, what's good. Will we get a new YouTube one day? Will things change another sort of way? Because obviously when YouTube came around, it changed the game in terms of video consumption and pretty much killed TV in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's exciting. Who knows?
Brilliant. And you mentioned YouTube there and how that changed the game. And so transporting yourself back as ex-Matty G when you were starting out, what advice would you have for kind of younger content creators today that see you as an inspiration or someone they'd like to emulate? What advice would you have?
God, seeing me as an inspiration frightens me massively. But what would I say in terms of advice? I think you've just got to do what you love. Find the passion that you have and just chase after it. For me, it's Formula One. I didn't get any results for many, many years. And even when I finished with my first channel, it was by no means a flat out success and I can just hang up my racing boots and that's it. Wow, what a journey. No, it was me managing a full-time job and also making content on my personal channel for fun. And it took a long old slog, and even not really knowing where I was going for something to fall in my lap, which granted doesn't come around very often, and I was very fortunate for it to arrive. But at the same time, I put myself out there, and I didn't know this opportunity was going to come up with WTF1. But the fact that I was on YouTube, I was passionate, I loved what I did, and I shared it with people. That's probably going to be enough if the opportunity comes around. So, for example, not many people know that when I first started out with my YouTube channel, I was trying desperately to get 100 subscribers. So I was all over Formula One forums and F1 game forums and league forums and everywhere I could possibly go to share to get 2 people to watch my video. And if you have that motivation, then you know you're on the right path. And it is a grind. It's not going to be overnight success. And I think some people can get a little bit carried away with that if they see some people growing at a massive rate. It always starts somewhere off camera, and it's a lot harder than people think. But if you love it enough, you'll be willing to put the effort in.
Yeah, there's an expression that I've heard more and more. It's like the 10-year overnight success story. So the tip of the iceberg, you see someone getting that success. They've worked their way into that position for many years. Thanks for that. I've got 2 slightly more trivial questions, which I hope you'll enjoy. The first is a sort of either or. So let's say, you're a successful Red Bull junior driver, and you can see there's loads of them in Formula 3. It's quite difficult to follow, Formula 2, sorry. It's quite difficult to follow who's who sometimes. But let's say you make it to F1. Which would you rather do and which would you avoid? Having a stern lecture from Helmut Marko, or getting a shoey from Danny Ricciardo and having to drink it on the podium?
I mean, I would voluntarily do a shoey out of Danny Rick's shoes. So I think that kind of answers the question. And I think any other option that you had for that Helmut Marko, I'm choosing Helmut Marko as the avoid. Like, that man is just, I mean, another kind of human being, really. So no, I would steer clear as much as I possibly could.
Okay, well, we may not see you presenting any Red Bull promotional videos anytime soon. So we're here for the main event question, the one we ask everyone. We asked Mario Andretti. We've asked many people this. I'm about to go out for dinner. I might find an Italian. I'm going to have some pizza. Let's say you're having a pizza. Pineapple on pizza or not?
Oh, yes. Get that pineapple all over my pizza. My God, Hawaiian is just the one. And, people might then also say barbecue sauce on pizza is terrible. No, stick that on, or not with the Hawaiian, but like that as well. Oh, my God, sign me up. It's either Hawaiian or a barbecue chicken, peppers. Oh, my days. I'm hungry now. It's like, yeah, it's past dinner time. So you've got me salivating now.
Yeah, you're probably going to have a salad or something for dinner. I don't know. But yeah, like, we've had some very thoughtful answers. We've had some absolute ones. So Mario Andretti was a hell no.
Of course it was.
Yeah, of course, the Italian descent. Miles Rowe, who's, we hope, about to clinch or by the time you hear this, has clinched the USF 2000 championship over in the States, gave a very sort of thoughtful answer about your freedom to choose, which was I found very entertaining. But that's you probably gave us the most.
That's very
exactly,
isn't it? That's not an answer, is it?
He
You know what I mean?
he said no for him. So he gave us an answer.
But you're allowed to choose.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's been as enthusiastic about pineapples on this show.
God,
So
I love a pineapple.
you certainly win that one. now you want some pineapple for dinner. Let me hand to Dens to see if he's got anything else. And Dens, perhaps you could wrap and take us home.
Oh, well, it's just been interesting to kind of hear that as well, because just like pineapple and pizza is such a divisive question. I feel people are either on one side or the other. So I'm glad that the camp of people that are saying it has increased with Matt Gallagher's influence here.
I'm at the helm. I am the pineapple leader when it comes to pizza.
We love to see it, man. Well, I think unfortunately for me, Black did actually ask all the nice questions I wanted to ask. Nay. But no, I mean, just one other question that came into the back of my head as well, man, is that, like there's a lot of awesome WTF1 content we've seen over the years. Recently as well, I tuned into one where I think you and Tommy were doing like a leaderboard of just like where you rank the drivers in 20th all the way to first on top of their performances, and you and Tommy agreed on a lot of drivers, and like there was some where you're like, nah, why is Vettel here and Albon all the way up here, etc. But just on like the topic of it as well, Matt, what would you say is the trickiest or like the most difficult video you've ever had to make for like the channel or the platform?
The most difficult video. There's not. Everyone goes, "Oh, what's your the most favorite? What's your number one video?" No one's ever said what the most difficult one is. There's been so many videos. Obviously, there are times where some videos are incredibly difficult and time restrictive, and there's a lot of pressure especially if it's like a branded piece of content and a company is paying for this, and you need to make sure that X, Y, and Z is filmed within blah blah blah. I would say there's been logistical stuff like that, but I wouldn't say there's one that I go, oh my god, yeah, that was horrendous. That's a difficult one to pinpoint. I think it's just because I love my job so much that it's quite difficult to say what one was the hardest, because I just love every single video that goes out. Have you not realised? They're all great, right? Go watch. Joking.
No, but I think that's a fair comment as well, Matt. And that's the thing too. Like, I guess the nature of the content that WTF1 puts out as well. It's informative, it's engaging, but it's nothing which is gonna at least for reasonable people anyway. I can't chat for the unreasonable people or the trolls out there, but it's amazing. It always leaves you with something to think about or more food for thought. So I always see it that way too. But then, okay, let's flip it on the positive side then. What would you say is like your favorite video or the one you enjoyed making the most?
Driving the F1 car by a country mile. By that, there'll be no memory that tops it. No children, no wedding will ever be able to top me driving an F1 car. I'm sorry, so
in relation to that as well, Matt, like for those who haven't seen it, because I haven't even seen that, that's like mega. Like, what
you haven't seen it? You've done all this research into like the cobwebs of my personal first channel, and yet you don't know I've driven an F1 car. What is this?
Man, I'll add it to my agenda list now.
On the 7th of October 2004, you were actually spotted at Azizi, but you don't know that.
To be honest, I was 9. Okay,
you're not 9 now.
True. How did that come about? What car was it?
It was technically the Lotus 2012 car. So Kimi Raikkonen's winning car from Abu Dhabi. I think he won maybe one or two others in that season. You'll be going and watching this, aren't you, when you're after this podcast? It was. Yeah, it came about literally in the first 2 months of us launching the YouTube channel. And it's a funny story, really, because I received an email that was from this agency, and it was a French agency, so it was actually reasonably broken English, and it was quite difficult to really ascertain what was going on. But it was like, oh, we're doing this competition, and we want like a media person to come along and document it all, and it's going to be broken down into fitness, driving some sports car / the ridiculous supercar that Renault have called the RS01, and then finally at the bottom of the email, after 3 or 4 paragraphs of big jargon, the final line was, "Oh, and by the way, you'll be able to drive the RS, whatever they called it, the Formula One car." And I was like, "What do you mean? Why are you putting that at the bottom of the email?" If you're trying to capture my attention, you probably want to put that in the headline and the first line of saying, "Hi, Matt, would you like to drive an F1 car?" But instead, they put it right at the bottom. I thought it was spam, but I replied anyway, because, I mean, look, if anyone says, do you want to drive an F1 car, I'm going to respond. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, it sounds interesting. Good." Turns out to be real. The whole thing is real, and it's Renault, and it's a French agency. And all of a sudden, this whole thing just gets plonked on our laps far before we're even ready. Like, my arms are still rigid from the test shoot. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to do any kind of good presenting at this point. But yeah, so it was an absolutely ridiculous experience. It was, as I say, I think it was broken down into 2 days. So the first day was the physical training, where, I mean, you'll enjoy watching that, because I almost died. People love to see my pain. The memeable bit is that I only managed to do 1 pull-up, but my defense is that I went through for the wrong grip. I went for the tricep pull-up rather than the bicep pull-up. If I'd done the bicep pull-up, I would have been able to do 1.5 probably. But ever since then, I literally, every time I go to the gym, I'm doing pull-ups, just in case it ever comes up again, just so I can shut down the meme. But yeah, so that happened, which was done in like the Renault gym where all the drivers usually train. And then after that, yeah, so then it was at Silverstone. So the next day was at Silverstone, drove some sports cars and stuff like that, and then I think maybe it was 3 days actually it was broken up into, but either or. Then the final day was me driving a Formula Ford to, like, basically acclimatise myself a little bit with half of Silverstone track that I'll be driving, and then the Formula One car, which, I mean, just seeing it in the garage, I was like, what the hell? Am I going to go it, like, the things that were going through my mind as a Formula One fan to the level that I am was just obscene. I was like, no way, it's not going to happen. Anyway, so Nico Hulkenberg was there on the day, so he took the car out beforehand and he obviously ragged it round. And I'm like, it's the fastest thing ever. Like, you're by the pit wall, you're seeing it fly past, scaring the life out of me just seeing it go past. I'm thinking, am I ready for this? Is my Formula One game experience going to be enough? So anyway, yeah, and then eventually the time comes round. But the thing is, after all of that, I got to standing basically next to the Formula One car, and then they started packing away. And I'm looking around, I'm going, do they not know? So all the team are packing away the car. And for these 3 days or however long it was, I've been geeing myself up to drive this Formula One car, and they're putting it away. And I was like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. So anyway, like, conversations being had, and they're like, oh no, we never knew about this. And I'm like, what do you mean you never knew about this? Was this spam after all? Was the email real? Do they even know I'm here? But anyway, eventually they stopped and were like, okay, yeah, no worries, you can have 2 laps or something. And I was like, oh my God. My dream was crumbling before me. I was like, well, if this doesn't happen, that's it. I'm never stepping foot outside again. And so then I got in the car, and yeah, the rest is history.
Wow, I definitely need to check it up afterwards. So I go into my watch list on YouTube. But also, Matt, that's just incredible. It's like a dream coming true. And like, I mentioned earlier, just like living vicariously through some of the experiences you've had. And that's just a huge one as well, being able to drive an actual official F1 car by Kimi, which is also very cool. But then also like the kind of like swings and roundabouts, almost having the opportunity, then it not almost being there, and then actually getting to do it. That's like one of the most fulfilling things as well. And to be honest, I couldn't think of somebody that's more worthy and more deserving of an opportunity.
Don't be silly. There's plenty more worthy people out there. I just was lucky enough to get the French agency message me. And the thing was as well, which I forgot to mention, they messaged me not knowing I'd moved to WTF1. So that was an ex-Matty G opportunity. And I'm like, that's when I know they haven't done their research, when they were approaching me, when there were bigger YouTubers out there. Yeah, I completely forgot that was actually not even going to be for WTF1.
Got me at you got me at no wedding and kids can top it, and I was like, okay, There's a whole story there.
I'm just being full blown honest here. You know what I mean? Like, when I pressed that accelerator, I left half my soul where I pressed the accelerator because it was the fastest thing in the world. Like, you'll see my head every time I gear shift, like it basically dislocates every time because it's so much G force. And the thing, they were really angry with me as well because they limited it. So they limited the car to 164 miles an hour. I know, that's slow. And that was the top of the gear. You see, I'm not sure if you see it in the video. I think you do, but you see me try and upshift. So my brain, going 164 miles an hour, thought, yeah, I need to upshift another gear here. Rather than thinking, I should probably start slowing down for the corner that's coming up. I wanted to go faster, which didn't make any sense at the time. I needed to change my underwear afterwards. But yeah, I just remember that day like it was yesterday. Like the whole thing was just incredible. I remember how hot it was and everything. I was like, Matt, you will absorb every second of this because it will never happen again. This will be the only time probably that I will enjoy more than my wedding or having children.
Oh my God. Well, I don't know what the missus will say, but at least from my perspective, Matt, like that is.
I've said it to her before. She knows. It's fine.
Okay. Oh man. Well, on that bombshell, Matt, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the episode today, man. And I really hope as well that we can get you back, hopefully later on in the season. You know, as things progress, you know, we might end up having to just make Formula B or Formula kind of like Plan H, whatever they want to call it, with what's going on in the world right now. But again, just amazing. It's almost like coming full circle to actually meet you kind of virtually on this podcast, but just generally as well to speak to you and to reminisce about some of those things as well. So before we go, Matt, any final words for you, your adoring fans around the world as well? Anything you want to say to them?
Oh God, this feels weird because usually I drop to Tommy and Katie final thoughts, but you've just dropped a final thoughts on me on the podcast. This is a new experience. But no, well, firstly, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a really enjoyable podcast. Genuinely, like you've done your research, apart from the fact I drove an F1 car, but I'll let it slide. But no, it's been really nice, and I wish you guys all the success continuing on, and just send me a message at the end of the season or whatever, and I'd be happy to come back on. And as for apparently I have fans, but thank you for allowing me to do this, because if not, I don't know what I'd do. And sometimes I put soppy posts out on Twitter and things like that because some people might just think, oh, what is it? But genuinely, sometimes I just sit in bed and I watch some videos and I go, that's me. How did I manage this? I'm ever so thankful to everyone, to you guys for bringing me on the podcast as well. Because this is just a dream, and hopefully I never wake up.
Oh, I could imagine, man. And honestly, like I said before, and I've consistently said as well, man, keep up the amazing work. Super proud of you, Tommy, KE, the entire WTF1 team as well. You guys are amazing and really the trendsetters. I know, in this field as well. Like, it's amazing just how you guys have transformed the way that fans like ourselves enjoy the content. And there's always something that we can engage with and look forward to. So it's amazing. And also, guys, this is like the final episode of the summer series shutdown. We've done, I think, 10 episodes with like guests, some of which you didn't know about before, but now you know. And I think it's amazing that we were able to conclude this particular series with the legendary Matt Gallagher. So make sure that you follow him if you don't already follow him, because that in itself is treason. Make sure as well that you check out the F1 video of him driving an F1 car, because I need to see that too. And just make sure you check out WTF1 if you're not already. Again, amazing platform, and I guess pretty much the blueprint for us as content creators. And obviously as well, show us some love too. We need some love. So just make sure that you tune in with me, Mr. Blag himself, Georgina, the amazing founder of this podcast, and again, super thanks to Matt as well. But until next time, guys, it's been your boy AMG Dens, the modern day Morgan Freeman. Until next time, peace.